G4 is dead once again, and in record fashion. Just 11 months.
New record!
But I should first ask if you even knew the network was back in the first place. Well, you can thank many people for this debacle, but I have a way to fix this. Ever since G4's demise, I've thought long and hard about it, and after watching the network's antics on and off the screen, I've compiled a pretty good autopsy on what the heck happened this time around, and how they can recover. Despite G4's unfortunate end, the network should be proud of what they accomplished, especially under some pretty bizarre situations that'll make your head spin. Now before we dive into the dumpster fire that was G4, here's a brief history of the network up to this point. For those unfamiliar with G4, it was a TV network that focused primarily on video games, tech, and internet culture. It first ran from 2002 until 2014, and while they aired a variety of programs, none were as weird and as iconic as XPlay, Attack of the Show, and Ninja Warrior. XPlay was a game review show hosted by Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb, where they would provide thorough analysis for video games mixed with some cleverly funny commentary and then rate them on a 5-star scale. Nowadays, we can find game reviews left and right, but it was much harder back then, and XPlay was the perfect medicine for every young gamer, including myself. Attack of the Show was a pop culture variety program hosted by Kevin Pereira and Olivia Munn, where they performed skits and made jokes about everything in the internet and gaming worlds. That show was wild and crazy, and no one took themselves seriously at all, which is what really resonated with me and many of the fans of the program. At this time, there was no other TV show like it. Then there was Ninja Warrior, and I'm sure many of you had this show playing in the background while you were doing something else. The fittest people would run through Japan's most challenging physical courses. Then hearing the announcer yell each time someone failed to complete the course, priceless. G4 never gave an official reason as to why the network went offline back in 2014, but I feel the network was just ahead of its time, as gaming was not as popular then as it is now. After 7 long years, G4 was finally back though, with a new logo, new programming, new Wish hosts, and most of all, a new strategy. Under new management who were confident in their success, G4 entered new ground like the digital space with channels on YouTube and Twitch, and even entering the esports scene because gaming has never been more popular. This begs the question, why did G4 fail so spectacularly? Over just 11 months, 3 different executives headed G4, and none managed particularly well. First was Tucker Roberts, who not only had poor taste, but poor decision making and barely showed up to the office. The reason why G4 never solved the problem of having too many YouTube channels, that was under his watch. Roberts stepped down after just 4 months, and Russell Aarons quickly took over the role. While she was a more consistent presence and the network performed marginally better, other unfortunate complications caused her to step down in July that same year. At this point, the damage was already done, and Joe Marsh became the leader of the G4 ship that was already sinking, and sinking fast. Lesson number 1 in any Business 101 course, which the higher-ups must have skipped, is to build a business plan and stick with it. I say that because it seems they had no real foundation on how to make this work, and just threw everything at the wall to see what stuck. Even if airing G4 on cable television was part of the deal, it still was a bad idea. Not to mention they had no idea how to manage their content on the digital space. There was no path to brand building, like having significant, reachable milestones, nor a focused platform that had set viewership or subscriber goals. It seemed they prioritized different metrics whenever they wanted, which led to production teams constantly changing their shows' formats. That also led to already understaffed crews to work longer hours. More importantly, they never got a chance to see if their content actually gained traction. It's obvious to me the executives were not only lazy, but didn't care to understand how to build a brand in the digital age, because they assumed the brand alone was enough to propel the network to success. That's why XPlay and Attack returned to the lineup with Sessler and Pereira back at hosting their respective shows, which I bet they begged and pleaded to come back because Nostalgia, I guess? It's also why they felt they could buy viewers by getting high-profile streamers to make guest appearances on their programs, and even get these streamers to send their audience over to G4's programs, which didn't work. Production teams across the network were already understaffed when G4 surprisingly laid off over 20 crew members in September, and things got even worse. Most of the fired staff were lead producers, which meant the remaining people had to work that much more, and well above their pay grade. Not to mention, a lot of the staff were underpaid contractors who lacked healthcare and other simple benefits. Now, I don't believe xplay host Frosk's situation contributed that much to the network's downfall, because I think G4's cowardice in this moment was the bigger issue. So if you don't know the situation, here's a quick synopsis. During the xplay segment, Frosk alienated the network's fanbase by pointing out that many of them were the ones objectifying the original G4 female hosts, and basically laid out an ultimatum saying that if they still agreed with these points, then they shouldn't watch the new G4. This caused an uproar among a portion of the fanbase, to the point where she and others have been harassed, doxxed, and threatened. I actually thought this was an impromptu segment, but G4 fully approved of it beforehand and initially supported Frost's statement by tweet. The continued harassment she received spooked G4, where they basically left her to dry, offering no support for Frosk, even going as far as to deleting their tweet of support and privatizing the video on YouTube. It was a cowardly move that proves how weak and incompetent the network truly was. If you think I'm wrong on this, comment and explain what you think about the situation, because I'd love to hear it. Now that you know the complete and utter mess that was G4, it's not much of a surprise they fell under, is it? But I did mention I have a solution. This should be common sense, but first find an executive who truly wants the network to succeed, that will be there every step of the way. Next, make a business plan that focuses on expanding digitally, which means having a feasible milestone for viewership and subscriber success on YouTube and Twitch. These numbers should be based on statistics of successful large channels and come from people versed in the content creation circle. I say just digital because cable is a dying and pointless venture for this kind of network. Next, ditch the contracting status and pay the workers what they deserve, and give them necessary benefits. Make an investment in your workers, because if you visualize G4 being a long-term success, then the people who will get you there are the staff, and they should not feel undervalued. Next is the content, and I still believe xplay and Attack should headline the network, especially with the group of talented and dedicated content creators they found, who performed admirably given the difficult environments. These two programs are integral in moving the network along, and with fully staffed production teams, it should be easier to maintain. G4 produced many new programs over the past year, and their quirky game show Name Your Price was one of their most successful, since it was one of the few to actually get a second season. While it wasn't my favorite, it should be a part of the lineup, but I would offer a suggestion. Give viewers a chance to be on the show, because you save money by not having to pay streamers for appearances, and there is no better way to reach potential audiences than to allow them an opportunity to compete on the program. Just look at Mr. Beast. The podcasts were a pleasant addition to the network that I enjoyed, especially Vibe Check and Freshing, which was a breath of fresh air. See what I did there? I enjoyed Vibe Check for its easy listening, hearing their thoughts about goings-ons in the world, and it's the perfect chore podcast. And Freshing was a very informative recap show where I learned a lot more Marvel and Star Wars trivia than I expected. These programs are a perfect complement to the network and should be a major part moving forward. For promotion, gather a dedicated social media team that would manage your Twitters and Facebooks of the world. Next, a sound strategy for YouTube would be to start from scratch and forego the many G4 affiliated channels and focus completely on building their content on the singular G4 TV channel, with several playlists for the major programs and whatnot. It removes any confusion for the audience to know where to find their content. Then, as the channel succeeds, expand appropriately. Continue with the collaborations with big and small creators, because the goal is to get your brand out there. You can't succeed alone, and you can't pay your way to the top. Continue to make appearances at conventions like San Diego Comic-Con are a must, and it's a great way to let people know you're back. The most important thing to remember is to trust the process, because it will take time and it won't be easy. In fact, you'll lose money and things will be rough, but you have to believe in your product. Yeesh, I sound like an after-school special. It seemed like the gaming network was moving right along, but little did we know how bad things really were. G4 failed the first time because the people weren't ready for them, but this time, the network themselves weren't ready. Unpreparedness, hubris, and some bad luck caused their downfall, but it's not too late. Now, this is highly unlikely, but if anyone from G4 is watching, hear this. There is an appetite for your content, but you have to be ready to put in the work to do it right. Now for the viewers out there, if there's anything you want to say to me, I'd love to hear it and talk with you about it. You can tell me in the comments, you can send me an email, or you can find me on Twitter or Facebook. Oh, and one more thing. If you're enjoying the content and want to keep up with my latest videos, feel free to subscribe by clicking that platypus over there. Thanks for watching, and stay nerdious.